This is a presentation of Northeast Streaming Sports.
And good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Mac and Jack Saturday debate show here on the Northeast Streaming Sports Network. I'm Paul Semendinger. I'm going to help facilitate today's wonderful debate with Mac and Jack. We have a whole bunch of great topics. The baseball playoffs began just yesterday, and Jack's going to run down real fast what happened in the playoffs.
Yeah, these playoffs, guys, unlike any other, we haven't seen anything like this before. The wild card games would be exactly that. It would be one game. But now it's best of three. And I like the way Major League Baseball has done it in this wild card round. 3 games, the team with the better record in the matchup, according to the seeding, hosts all 3 home games. They don't have to travel 3 games in a row. So there were 4 games yesterday, and out of the 4 games, 4 teams advanced up 1-0, advanced as far as getting closer to the next round, up 1-0, and 4 teams are facing elimination today. In the American League, I'll go over it pretty quickly. The team I picked to win the World Series, the Toronto Blue Jays in a hole. Thanks in large part to Seattle's pitching led by their starter, Luis Castillo, who they got from the Cincinnati Reds. And if you guys remember, he was a hot commodity at the trade deadline.
A lot of people wanted the Yankees to get him.
Right, because they thought Luis Castillo would be a difference maker. And was he ever? He shut down the Toronto Blue Jays. So the Blue Jays in the hole now, down 1-0. They have to win the next 2. They're facing elimination. In the other playoff series, the Yankees' next opponent is coming out of that. The Tampa Bay Rays, who've been a nemesis to the Yankees over the years, they played at Cleveland against the Cleveland Guardians, not Indians anymore, Cleveland Guardians. And they were winning 1-0, but Jose Ramirez, their great infielder, hits a 2-run homer, and the Guardians win a tight one, 2-1. And they're 1 game away from advancing. The Rays have to win the next 2. In the National League, I'll tell you, I watched this game. It was a thriller. St. Louis Cardinals against the Philadelphia Phillies, and it was a great pitchers duel. And until they went to the bullpen, the starters did great. Zach Wheeler goes out for the Phillies, and then all of a sudden, they're down 2-0. Their bullpen isn't holding the Cardinals. The Cardinals enter the 9th inning, up that 2-0 score. The crowd is roaring. They're waving their towels. Somehow they put together a rally, okay? And it was a little bit small ball. Batter was hit by a pitch. Bryce Harper walks. A little ground ball from Segura finds the hole. And before you know it, run after run is scoring. And the Phillies wind up winning 6-2. The Cardinals do have the next 2 at home. The crowd's going to be solidly behind them. But you have to be shell-shocked from that. You have to put it out of your mind. So it's a great, great win for the Phillies there. And then it was the San Diego Padres against the New York Mets here. And it shows you guys how unforgiving the postseason can be. Max Scherzer, one of the great pitchers of this modern era, who the Mets signed to a 3-year, $130 million contract, okay? Close to $13 million more a year than the Yankees offered Aaron Judge, by the way, but that's another story. He had a very good year, Scherzer. I don't want to say, if you believe a player should get that much money, a baseball player, then he was worth the money, if you believe that. Okay, he had a heck of a year, but he was dreadful yesterday. Gave up 4 home runs, taken out in the 5th inning, and it was 7-1 they lost. And to Scherzer's credit, he talked to the media. He didn't hide from it, even though he was in a state of shock. And even Brandon Nimmo, the Met outfielder, said he was totally stunned by what he saw. Because when you're watching a teammate pitch like that, it's pitched so good all year. And this is it. This is showtime, the playoffs. So, and it gets me to thinking, guys, we basically pay a guy for the long haul. So if you have a pitcher, and let's say like a Clayton Kershaw historically, Clayton Kershaw, by finally winning a couple of games in the World Series, put his postseason woes behind him. But guys, if you're paying the big bucks to a guy, and he's just now responding in the postseason, but he's a great regular season pitcher, is he worth the money? I mean, I was a little exasperated. And if Jacob deGrom loses today and pitches poorly, what does that say about the great Met 1-2 punch?
It says that they didn't get the job done in the
playoffs. They didn't get it done in Atlanta, guys. Scherzer didn't get it done in Atlanta. When had they won one of those 3 games in Atlanta at the end of the year, guess what? They wouldn't be playing San Diego. They'd be waiting for the Philly Cardinal winner. They'd have a bye.
So guys, it leads me to the question: are the managers pulling the pitchers too fast? I mean, are they going to the bullpen? Are the bullpen pitchers? They're giving up the run. So, are they pulling the relief pitchers too fast?
I think that's a great question, Mac. Baseball has changed, and I was having this discussion actually with 2 of the biggest baseball fans I know, my mom and dad, and we were talking.
Dad, the Red Sox fan,
big
right?
Reds, yes, yep, and we were talking about the game. Actually, the one we broadcast here on the with the live stream on Monday night with Luis Severino, and the Yankees took him out with a no-hitter.
Yeah.
And you understand why you did that. He's pitched so many pitches, etc. And if you watched my Yankee show this morning, I spent a lot of time talking about Aaron Judge, and I think we're going to bring that up as one of our questions sitting the last day of the season, when he had a chance, as remote as it was, to win the batting title. When Johan Santana threw that no-hitter, he was never the same pitcher again. And so I get that idea. You don't want to push a pitcher too far and things like that. But I think somewhere along the line, baseball has lost a little of its magic, a little of its the idea that the game is so special and so wonderful, with the idea that the pitchers come out of the games. And I mean, it used to be the big, like a heavyweight fight. Carlton against Seaver, like the 2 best pitchers, and they're going to battle it out for 9 innings. And now it's like Carlton against Seaver, and they battle it out for 5 innings. And then it's one middle reliever guy after the next for the next 4 innings until you get to the closer, who may or may not be good that year. So I think baseball's evolved to the point where smart baseball decisions, which you can't argue against, get in the way of the stories and making the game as fun as it can be for the fan.
Yeah.
Guys, I think managers are caught up on pitch counts.
Yes.
I wish they wouldn't even take the number of pitches and just see how a pitcher feels. There are different situations. A couple of years ago in the World Series, Blake Snell was dominating the Dodgers, and he was taken out way too early, and the Dodgers were practically celebrating on the bench. They couldn't hit this guy. I mean, he was totally masterful, and as soon as they went to their bullpen, I mean, Mookie Betts said he was thrilled that Blake Snell was taken out. But in the case of a Severino, he's been injured a good part of the year. They're kind of building the arm up. They maybe don't want to push it. I mean, I can understand in some cases because you're close to the postseason. What happens?
It all makes sense, but you lose something. That's my point. How many chances will Luis Severino in his career pitch 7 no-hit innings?
Well, Joe Torre did that with David Cohn.
He did when he came back from the aneurysm. Yeah.
Yeah, but should we put guys, and what do you think, Mac? Should we put some blame on the pitchers for starting pitchers for adhering to this policy? They're not fighting with their managers or arguing or showing they want to get in bad enough. They're not doing what a Mike Mussina did with Joe Torre. Not that I like what Mussina did, waving him away. You're not taking me out of this game. A star player can get away with it. Remember the movie 61? Ralph Hogg says to Mickey Mantle, I'm sitting you out. And Mickey goes, no, I'm playing. And the manager backs off because certain players command that power. But if a Severino made it clear in the dugout, he had to have an idea he was going to be taken out. He can't be that naive that it was a shock. He'd go up to Aaron Boone in the dugout, say, look, I'm feeling great. You leave me in there. Or better yet, I'm going to give you the better case of this. In the early, I think it was 1991, when the Twins beat Atlanta in the World Series, the 10-inning game. Jack Morris pitched all 10 innings. Afterwards, his manager said, Tom Kelly said, I can't believe I left Jack Morris in for 10 innings. Jack Morris made it clear, you're not taking me out of this blankety blank game. You know, Mariano would have done the same thing in 2003 against the Red Sox. He pitched 3 innings, a 2-hit ball, shutout ball in relief. And Joe Torre was thinking, well, I couldn't have gone with him any longer. And Mariano later said, no, they weren't going to take me out. I was going to pitch as long as I needed to be. Yeah. And Joe Torre probably would have turned to Mariano and said, okay, good job, Mariano. Now we're going to so-and-so. And Mariano would have said, no, you're not. I'm staying in here. Yeah. But these guys, they're used to it. Like Zach Wheeler yesterday, he's taken out after only giving up a couple of hits. He's taken out in the 7th inning. And I think he expected it. I mean,
well, you know what? You get a mindset. Yeah. Also, like, all right, I gave him 6, I gave him 7, I'm done. The mindset used to be, it's my game. I'm the starting pitcher, and I'm going to finish what I started. I mean, and again, from a baseball standpoint, from a we want to win tomorrow, and from a health standpoint of we don't want to wreck a guy's arm, you can't argue with any of it. The statistics are clear. You know, you go over 110 pitches or whatever, and now you're getting into dangerous territory. So at least that's the common knowledge today. Maybe somebody will refute all that and come up with better, different numbers. But right now, that's what the assumption everybody's operating under. So you don't want to hurt a guy's career. You don't want to ruin a guy's potential and all that. So you take him out. But what happens in the meantime is that some of the majesty, some of the glamour, some of the things that legends are made out of gets lost in the process.
You're a statistician. If you can never find this out, there was this pitcher, Harvey Haddix, who pitched 12 innings perfect. Then he lost the game in the 13th. I wonder what his pitch count was at the end.
I don't think they count. I don't think you can get that stuff. I don't think they kept track.
Can't get it anymore. But Warren Spahn, you don't tell me that Warren Spahn didn't have his good share games where he threw 140 pitches, 135, 140, over and over and over. And he never, it seemed like he was never injured. But then again, you look at a Sandy Koufax. If he pitched in the modern era, chances are his career wouldn't have been shortened. So, you know, I'm not sure what the answer is. But in certain cases, when you have a chance to go for greatness, I think you kind of go for it. Or if you're in the playoffs, I don't think you start playing with pitch counts. A-Rod agreed with what Max said yesterday. Okay, by the way, A-Rod was saying you have to trust your eyes. So what you were saying, Mac, A-Rod was actually going over. He's a believer in what you were saying. Yeah. You know, you just have to go and feel like what you're seeing. How is the guy throwing? What happened to the days, guys? Remember this when that manager would ask the catcher, how's he thrown? How's his velocity? How's this? How's that? You don't have that anymore.
No, and it's too push button, right? He's at this point, we take him out. And again, I just think the sport itself loses. And again, you can't argue it because it makes sense on so many levels. But hey, Jack, it's the same thing. Like, what's more exciting, a 12-round heavyweight championship or a 15-round heavyweight championship? I don't think we have 15-round fights anymore.
No, not anymore. You know, you guys.
Same idea.
I'm going to ask both of you guys this question because it just popped into my head now. The Mets are facing elimination today.
Which, Jack, watch this. You are so prescient that you are answering the question that just came up in the comments. Did the Mets lay an egg or do they recover?
I'm not exactly. I mean, to give the answer. Well, that's one of our questions in a little while, Alan. Which team is going to most likely come back? So we'll answer that later. But this just popped into my head. The Mets are facing elimination today. Jacob deGrom, who's pitching for them, is a free agent. Okay? I'm sure the Mets think it's just 50-50 that he's going to come back to them. I don't know what their mindset is. Does Buck Showalter, you don't want a guy to get hurt. Does he maybe pitch him a little longer than he might otherwise? Let's say deGrom was signed for the next 2-3 years and he has to think a little in the future. Let's say deGrom, is going 110, 115, 120 pitches. Is he pitching them basically to the bitter end as long as he's effective and his velocity is good because the whole season is on the line? What do you think? Does it come into his head?
I don't think you can let that get into your head. I think that's actually managerial malpractice.
No, the pitcher has to go out. I mean, if he's throwing hard and you ask the pitcher, how are you feeling?
What Max said before and what you said. And with all these different camera angles and the way they can break down, what could happen with all the video and things like that is that could be the next revolution in understanding pitchers is when you're tired and when you're fatigued. And Andy Singer was talking about this on the Gamecast on Monday. And Andy has a lot of knowledge about pitching. When you get tired, when fatigue comes, you start to change, even if it's ever so slightly, your arm angle, the way you're driving.
Sure.
And it would be great if the technology got to the point where you're throwing 120 pitches, but you're still keeping your form and everything's right. And if everything's right in the way it should be, you're probably not going to get hurt. And that pitcher, you can keep him in. Or somebody else, you're starting to say, like, look, he's losing it because his arm slot, his shoulder's not quite where it used to be or it should be. And they use that as the way to decide when a pitcher should come out, not just saying, 100 pitches, let's take him out. Because you could be going over 100 and still be in good shape, and maybe you have another 10 or 15 or 20 pitches in you.
How do you break down Cortez's delivery? Right, he has a crazy.
That's a great question.
Yeah, he has a crazy delivery. So how are you going to break down whether he's tired or not?
And maybe some people you can't. That's a great point.
I mean, the injury fact is one thing, but I always think of Sandy Koufax, Game 7 of the 1965 World Series, the Dodgers over the Twins. The Dodgers had Don Drysdale, future Hall of Famer, ready to go on regular rest, but they start Sandy Koufax on 2 days rest, and he pitches a 3-hit shutout. Yeah. I mean, so you just go, I'll be honest about it. I would go with, a pitcher on very short rest, always in an elimination game. I would take my chance if that's my ace.
If it's somebody super great.
Yeah,
hey, you know what we should do now? We should get to the questions. What do you think?
Okay.
So here's our first one for today. The question is, and it's not talking about how it impacts on the playoffs and whatever the structure is at that particular time. But the question is, does winning the division in baseball, coming in first place in your division, still matter? Is that important? And let's start off with Mac.
I don't think it is, Doc, anymore. It's all about the playoffs, right? I mean, as long as you can get in the playoffs, who cares who wins the division now? I mean, it's sort of like basketball and hockey, right? It's a new season when the playoffs start. So if I'm managing, the team, I'm not worried. I'm going to rest my players. I'm not worried about the division at all. I'm worried about where, who wins the playoffs. And I definitely think the playoffs are a lot more important than the season right now.
What do you think, Jack?
Max said it for me perfectly. I'll just basically give one example. I can't put it any better than Mac did. 2004, the Yankee collapse. Who won the division? The Eastern Division. The Yankees beat out the Red Sox. Does anyone give a darn? Does anyone remember? Does it mean anything at all? I remember at that time, it was an embarrassing loss by the Yankees. I actually thought the Red Sox were going to beat them out that year. I'm not just saying that now. And when the Yankees went up 3-0, that was the only time I felt the Yankees were going to advance to the series, because no one blows a 3-0 lead, but the Yankees did it, But when it was all over, I was thinking to myself, wouldn't that be a cute thing the following season? The Red Sox come into town and we raise the banner, Eastern Division champions. You know what I mean? What would it have meant? They would have laughed at us. It means nothing. The Yankees won their division this year. If they get bumped off by the Guardian Ray winner, who is going to give a darn?
Mm-hmm.
I think by and large you're both right. And I think with the Yankees, it's a little bit different because the Yankees standard is you have to win the World Series. And it's been a long time since they last did that in 2009. But I still think for other teams, the idea that you came in first place, it matters. I think if nothing else, for marketing, I think for prestige, the idea of a baseball season being 162 games, the true mark of excellence is who's the best over that longer period. The playoffs, as you both said, are what really matters. That's all people focus on in the end. But I still think it means something to come in first place. And when you finished in first place, your team did accomplish something that's significant. So I'm going to say it matters. It doesn't matter as much as it used to, but I still think when you come in first place, especially if you're not the Yankees, because the Yankees sort of have this expectation they're going to be in the playoffs anyway. But other teams who don't necessarily get to finish in first place as often as the Yankees do, I think it's a pride thing. And I think it's, you could say we were the best team in the division and the playoffs are a crapshoot and we couldn't quite pull it off.
I mean, it could. I understand what you're saying, but at the end, let's face it, people remember the playoffs. This past season, the San Francisco Giants were very mediocre. They were 81-81, but the year before, they won 107 games. We remember them more for the number 107 than them coming in first place in the Dodgers that year, one game behind them, because the Dodgers beat them out in the postseason. So we don't think of the Giants as divisional champs. We think of a 107-win team that they had a great regular season. I understand both elements. If the Baltimore Orioles came out of nowhere and they won their division and then got eliminated in the first round by one of the other good teams, yeah, they could say we were division champs. We took a step forward. Sure. It could mean something, but by and large, I don't think it does the way it did. Even other sports too, guys. Who wins a division in basketball and hockey? At the end of the day, right? It's the playoffs that
it doesn't
we're going to remember the most.
I agree.
Yeah, unfortunately, the more you enhance the playoffs, the less significance the regular season takes. That's the byproduct. So
sure.
All right, so we have 4 teams in the playoffs right now in baseball, and 4 games is what I meant to say right now. And we have the Mets as losers, we have the Cardinals as losers, we have the Rays as losers, and we have the Blue Jays as losers. And the question really is, among those teams, which one is the least likely to win the World Series at this point?
Well, I thought we were going to change it to which one was most likely to come back from a 1-0 deficit.
Oh, all right. Yeah, that was an audible before the show, and I changed. I was reading the question.
Right. When I proposed at least likely, but if we could do it both, it's make it a day-night doubleheader.
All right, it's a day-night single admission.
Right. I'd say the team least likely was the team that I thought was least likely to advance in the playoffs, and they lost yesterday to Tampa Bay Rays. Okay, they got into the playoffs, but they don't seem to be the Tampa Bay Ray team of old. They following, I guess, a decent formula, signing their good young players when they can a few years before free agency. So they're going to be relevant for years to come. But then again, like we mentioned, players like Blake Snell, they'll sell those guys off who could have an impact because those guys are coming up on, free agency for them, and they feel they can't really afford them. So they're really rebooting well, but I don't think they have the spark, and I don't think they can win the next two against the Guardians, and I don't think they beat the Guardians to begin with. So I think they're the team that's least likely. Team most likely to come back. Sometimes you're stuck with something. I picked the Toronto Blue Jays to win the World Series. So can I really say the Mets or the Cardinals are more likely to come back than the Blue Jays? They lost to Seattle yesterday. I think it was just a case of Luis Castillo shutting them down. And I'm waiting for Toronto to wake up. Vlad Guerrero, George Springer and company. So my guess would be I'm still going to stick with the Toronto Blue Jays. I'm going to be pretty stubborn that they're more likely to come back than the Rays, of course, the Cardinals, or the Mets.
I think least likely to come back is the Colorado Rockies playing the Dodgers. I mean, I have no idea how they would come back and beat the Dodgers. So that would be my pick, guys.
Yeah. Max having a lot of humor with this one.
Yeah. I don't think they have.
Mac doesn't want to answer this one. What about you, Doc?
All right, so I think the Rays are done. I agree with you, Jack, that I don't think the Rays have any chance this time. If we go back to early September, the Rays were playing great baseball, and we got to a Friday. They beat the Yankees to creep within 2 games of catching the Yankees, and they had 2 games left to play, and then they dropped both games. And the Yankees for the next week or so still didn't turn it on yet, but the Rays kept losing, and they were never able to get back to that point where they had any type of consistency or good play. And I think that's just the way their season ended, and I think they carried that into the playoffs. So I think they're the least likely to win anything. And I think out of the teams that lost, the team that still has the best chance, I'm going to go unconventional and say it could be the Mets, because I just think that if Jacob deGrom can win, and if they can then win tomorrow in any series, when you have Jacob deGrom and Max Scherzer, those 2 guys could just shut you down, and they could pitch 3 or 4 times in a 7-game series. So when you have greatness and they're great starting pitchers, anything can happen. Now,
it's a 3-game series. So Scherzer's done,
and for this series. Yes,
series, right.
But you were talking about who can go on and win the World Series.
Well, I was thinking more who could rebound in this playoff series.
Well, the Mets can. If Jacob deGrom can win, then they can win. Then tomorrow anybody can win a 1-game thing. And then I'm saying, I thought it was going forward all the way through the World Series. I think it's the Mets would always still have a fighter's chance in any playoff round because of the fact that they have these 2 great starters.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know what I thought about, guys? I think I maybe mentioned it on the show yesterday, Doc. So I don't know whether you heard. The teams that are getting the buys, like the Dodgers, the Braves, the Yankees, the Astros, they're going to be off close to a week before they play. And in baseball, that could be a bad thing. That could be a bad thing. Are these teams, if they wanted to, could they bring in their top minor league affiliate behind closed doors, like at Yankee Stadium, play a simulated game against the minor leaguers, a real game where the minor leaguers are throwing hard, playing hard? We wouldn't want any head first slides. You know what I mean?
I think they're doing stuff like that. Wasn't Matt Carpenter at a minor league facility, playing simulated games and stuff like that? I think basically they're trying to do that kind of stuff.
During the week off, I'm talking about the 6 days to try.
Right. But I don't think there's any rule against them practicing however they determined is the best way to.
But they don't do it. Let's say the Mets had to buy with the Brooklyn Cyclones come in. And then say we're playing on Thursday and we're playing on Sunday. We're playing regular games. You tell your pitchers you're throwing hard. You're playing as hard as you can.
You know what I think the problem with that would be is if you're playing a real game and a guy gets hurt, I think it goes back to that risk reward thing we started the show off with. Like how do you ever explain that away? And the major league guys who are looking at that next series, you can say, I want you to go as hard as you can and I want you to play hard, but in the back of their mind, they're not giving 100%. They're saying, like, I have to save myself and I have to, keep an idea that these games don't count. So they're not going to be quite playing where they should. And that's when people get hurt too, is when you're not playing 100% all in. And on the other side, if I'm the minor league guy from AAA or AA, and I have a chance in front of the coaches and the major league staff to impress them, well, I'm going to be ramping it up even a little bit more. And again, I think all those things sort of could lead to results that are detrimental to the player trying to ramp it up.
You want them to ramp it up. You want them to play it hard. You want them to push your guys a little bit. It's mostly for the hitters, for their benefit, so they can be pitched against live pitching guys, throwing hard, breaking balls. Keep that level of sharpness. I wouldn't want an outfielder trying to rob someone, diving, from the team ready for the playoffs, trying to make a sensational play, but just to sharpen up. I compared to boxing to sparring. You're not
but sparring's not fighting.
No, but you're keeping sharp, okay, in the meantime.
Well, that is different than playing a game where you're telling people you're going all out. I think they're doing that kind of stuff, and they're playing simulated games. I think that they're basically sparring.
Simulated games, maybe not all out. I don't want a player to try to stretch a single into a double. Okay, the minor leaguers can do that. By all means, that would be good if they try to do it, because you're working on your relay throws, etc., etc. But I wouldn't want my team getting ready for the playoffs to make that extra 10%.
In a month, Jack, I'm going to be running the New York City Marathon, right? 26.2 miles. I've done this, will be number 23 as far as marathons go. So I've done this for a long time, decades. I've been running marathons, but never in any training do they ever have you run 26.2 at any pace in your training, right? I think one person, Galloway, suggests a 30-mile run, but most every other training program says your long run should be 18 to 20. Maybe you push it to 22 miles, but most of the training programs say as long as you get an 18-miler in, you're good. Maybe you do 2 18-milers, and then you're going to be ready for the 26.2.
In the future, they'll change that and tell you to cover the distance at one point.
Maybe, and
I'm slower pace than you're going to do normally.
But you're making the point. Even if you cover the 26.2, they want you to do it at a slower pace, right? Is what you're saying. But even if you're not doing that, they're saying that don't go all out. It's training, and when the big day comes, you'll be ready for the big day. And I think the same idea is in sports.
You convinced me. Let them play a 5-inning game. Not a 9-inning game. Instead, you convinced me.
No, it's not happening. All right. So let's continue with the debates. I love the audibles that we come up with. Let's leave baseball for a minute and let's go to another sport. And here's an interesting one. It's kind of baseball too, but what the heck? This hits upon our love of baseball and Jack's love of boxing. But there's a couple guys out there that are retired, or almost retired. Floyd Mayweather and Albert Pujols. And the question is, of the two, and you're not allowed to say neither, of the two, which is more likely to come out of retirement? We'll start with Mac. Pretty boy Floyd Mayweather or Albert Pujols?
I would say Albert Pujols. I think Albert Pujols is still an unbelievable ball player. He may not be what he once was, but he still can hit the home runs. He still can play first base. His defense isn't his best qualified best to play first base, I guess I would say. But Pujols still has a lot in him, as you saw this year. Still a big guy, still a fan favorite, still a face of St. Louis. So I think Pujols would be the one that's less likely to retire.
What do you think there, Jack?
I have a lot of respect for Max Sansa. It makes sense. But they did ask Pujols last week. He says, no, this is it. He's had it. He wants to go out on top. But as we all know, a lot of times it's just talk. I think the lure for Pujols is the number 775, Barry Bonds' home run total. Okay, he has 703. Do the math. He's 72 homers away. Albert Pujols is probably thinking, wow, I could come back to the Cardinals. I have 230 home run seasons. That's 60. That puts me at 763. And then I could play part of the next season, pass Bonds. As soon as I pass him, retire for real. And he might think, I still got it the way I'm finishing up. I still got it. But with that said, I'm going to say Mayweather, believe it or not, okay? I know how much Mayweather wants to protect his unbeaten record and basically fool the younger generation into asking, I'm tired of being asked questions. Do you think Mayweather's the greatest fighter of all time? I mean, he's been a great fighter of his era. Why don't you ask me, is he the greatest fighter of his era? Because his accomplishments, it's kind of like a soft 50, There have been other great fighters who won more than 50 fights in a row. They went on long streaks. Sugar Ray Robinson went 87 fights without being defeated and generally fought a better level of opposition. But that's great. But money talks here, guys. Mayweather lives the most crazy, lavish lifestyles. He's boxing exhibitions now against MMA guys, keeping in shape. I could see Mayweather getting together with Pacquiao, figuring, wow, my fortune is dwindling. Because the way Mayweather spends money like water, figuring I could get $300-400 million to fight Pacquiao, maybe $500 million. He's thinking, let's do this. Coming out of retirement, maybe figuring, and I think I can win the fight and I could replenish my funds, to no end. Plus, Mayweather could come out of retirement, guys, anytime. This is boxing. It's a sick sport where people would believe when Mike Tyson was 58 years old, could he beat Tyson Fury? Okay, that's how bizarre, how the mindset. So you could go into hibernation and come back. Once Pujols is off 1 year, that's it. The baseball people don't like a guy coming back after 1 year. I'll give you a little bit of case in point to a lower level. Take a guy who we all love, Brett Gardner. Gardy was offered a 1 year deal for $6 million, I think, to play for the Atlanta Braves, if I'm not mistaken.
I thought the Blue Jays offered him a
contract.
The
Blue Jays, I'm sorry, the Blue Jays, okay? If he decides after this year to come back to baseball after being off 1 year, do you think the Blue Jays are going to offer him a 1 year, $6 million contract? They're going to probably ask him to report to camp, maybe give him a $1 million, if that. I don't even think the Blue Jays would put Gardy on the roster now. They'd look at his age. He was off a year, so they'd move on from the idea of acquiring him. So I think based on that, once Pujols sits out a year, even if he gets the urge to come back, it's too late. St. Louis isn't taking him back.
Jack, I don't think so. I think St. Louis would take him back arms wide open. I don't know if
after your year layoff.
Of course. I mean, he's still hitting the ball and practicing and all that stuff. I don't know if he'll catch Bonds.
He'd be hitting golf balls for the year that he was off. That's the only thing he'd be hitting.
I don't know about that. I think he still would be practicing. Pujols is still a very, very healthy man. I mean, I don't see him retire. I think he'll go on and play a few years if he can. So, I think.
But why is he so good, Mac? Mac, answer me this: with the Angels, he had flamed out for years. Right. He had a resurgence for a couple of months. Which is the real Pujols?
I think it's the one that had the resurgence, Jack. I think playing for California, he wasn't happy there. I don't think he was happy playing for California. So I believe I think he goes on to play a few more years, Jack.
All right. So my answer was neither. And in the pre-program discussion, I was scolded and said politely and nicely. I'm just kidding. Yeah. Jack goes, "You can't say neither. You have to come up with one of them." So
most
anyway,
likely, even if it's less than 1%, and
so I think Pujols is done. I think, and if you remember back to '95, Don Mattingly, who was keeping it together barely, said for the playoffs, "I'm just going to leave it all out there on the line, and I'm going to go out as the best player I possibly can." And he did, and he had a great playoff. I think we're seeing the same kind of thing with Albert Pujols. It's a long, grinding, hard season, and I don't believe that he wants to go through all of that again and again. I think the idea of catching Bonds is so remote. You're talking about 3 more years. That's
72 homers to pull even with him. 72 homers.
Yeah, so you're talking about basically 3 more years. That's a long time. And when you get to the point where you say, you know what, I'm done. I don't have that kind of energy to do that job the way it needs to be done, and you make that decision. I think he has come to grips with it. He's talked that he's comes to grips with it, and he's planned to retire. And I think he was able to turn it on at the end because he said, "This is it. I'm going to go out with the best I have."
But Doc, what kind of energy do you need to play first base? You don't need. You don't.
You could DH. You could DH too.
Oh, I think
of course, there's no energy required to play first base. You're basically standing there catching the ball. Come on, Doc. Come on. I mean, there's no way Pujols doesn't continue on playing. He's very healthy. He's a healthy man. I don't understand why you would say that. He's gonna be there for the next at least 3 years, Doc and Jack.
And Matt, Doc thinks he knows the way Pujols is thinking. Doc's saying automatically, Mac, he's saying 3 more years. Pujols is thinking 2 years, 72. 36 times 2 is 72. And he's probably thinking, I can hit 36 homers a year if I can keep going like this.
Listen, if the choice was show up at the ballpark and play first base or DH, play for 3 hours and then go home, that's one thing. But that's not how you play baseball. You show up hours beforehand. You have to spend hours in the batting cage. Yeah, you start off in February in spring training. You have to go through all the rigmarole of getting ready to play. There's a lot of baseball that happens before the first pitch of a ball game. Those guys have been there for hours, most of the day. It's a grueling existence. And I can understand a player saying, you know what, I don't want to do that anymore. I can't do that. I can't invest that type of physicality to play baseball at that level.
Pujols doesn't have to get ready. What do you mean get ready? He just steps in the batter's box and does his thing.
No way.
Of course.
Part of it is work environment, Doc. Okay, like Mac, he probably loves playing at this moment because he's playing in St. Louis. The fans are great. They love him there. It's not like playing in California where the fans, I guess, like them, but it wasn't home. In a certain sense, he's come home to St. Louis. He shouldn't have left to begin with. That's on him. He was greedy. St. Louis offered him a 9-year contract, and they wouldn't go for a 10th year, so he left. For the same money, basically, per year. But
all right,
whatever.
so we'll revisit this discussion in April, May, and June of next year when Albert Pujols is not playing, because there's more to playing baseball than just showing up at the ballpark at 7:30 and swinging the bat 3 times.
My answer was Mayweather, even though I would put my money on neither coming back.
Yeah, I think the idea with Mayweather is you can have a boxing match with a couple of 50-year-old guys as like, hey, we're going to think about making a comeback. George Foreman did it. Rocky Balboa, fake, but Rocky Balboa did it. And would that be something to attract hundreds of millions of dollars? A match against Pacquiao, probably. So I think your point is well taken that he might do that. So if it had to be picking between one of the two, it would be Mayweather.
Mayweather might
and
be.
Pujols ain't coming back.
Mayweather might be looking at. Mac.
Yes.
Mayweather might be looking at 300 million. Pujols would be looking at about 5 million. So that's
my God. You guys have lost your minds. You guys have lost your minds. There is no way Pujols retires. Pacquiao is a defensive fighter at best. He is not the best of the area. He's sure not the best of all time. I don't know what you guys are talking about.
All right, so Albert Pujols, the last time he hit 36 home runs in a season was 2015 when he hit 40. He's gone 31, 23, 19, 23, 6, 17, and 17, and that was this year. So he's
but what's he done the last month, 6 weeks? I mean,
you guys are discounting my perspective on this, and that's fine. He's ramped it up at the end because he says, I'm going to leave it out all on the field.
Doc, who knows if he was not hurt or whatever in California?
For 6 years.
We don't know whether he was hurt or not.
42 years old.
That's not old. That's not old. He's 45 and he plays football.
You remind me,
Tom Brady's 1 in a million.
Yeah.
Doc, you shouldn't have mentioned 6 years. You reminded me of the honeymoon episode when Ralph moved in with his in-laws. He said, just for a little while till I get back on my feet. Those were the worst 6 years of my life.
Yes.
Say, I went to the Angels just for a little while, just to get my career straightened out. Those were the 10 worst years of my career.
And Albert Pujols this year earned only $2,500,000.
But he's
not. So he's going to come back for $2 million bucks.
He's not playing for the money anymore. He's playing for the love of the game. I mean,
he's not.
He's playing for the record. I think
he's not. He's going home, and he's saying, "You know what? I had a great career."
He's not going home. I wish I wish I could get you two in a room and hear you say.
Let me tell you something. I don't know how old Pujols' kids are. But a buddy of mine who lives in Tampa, we were talking. He's a season ticket holder for the Buccaneers, and he's talking about the situation with Tom Brady and his wife Giselle, that she wants Tom around the house more, spending more time with the kids. And my friend said something, it actually makes sense. Even though it seems like I'm joking, and I am a little bit, but it does make sense. The kids get older. The dad hanging around, they want to be with their friends. Once you turn 12, 13, you're not going to want to hang around with your parent the whole time. So Pujols' kids are older. It's good he's there to do errands, take accountability, this and that. But, he's going to maybe have more time on his hands than he thought in feeling his kids. How much could you do with them? They have their own thing they want to do with friends. You're going to drive them to a friend and basically pick them up. And that, is going to be it for the most part. And he might just miss the lure, the game there. I mean, but we could debate it back and forth. But now,
right. So, I'm glad we're gonna keep this recorded and archived. And when he doesn't play next year, you're both going to say, Doc, you saw it, man. You were the one who got it. He didn't come back because it's a grueling job, and he did it. He's 43 next year. He's not going to play another year, and he's not saying I'm going to reach Barry Bonds. That is so far away that it's impossible.
Baseball is not as grueling as you say.
Oh, it's more than you think.
It's 162 games. I get it. But it's not as grueling as you say. It's not like football or hockey. You're not getting hit. You're not for sure. You're not worried about people running into you and stuff like that. That's illegal now. So Pujols will be there, and he'll be good as ever.
Pujols will be good as ever when you look at the back of his baseball card and you say, boy, what a career that guy had.
Yeah, of course.
And right, as he's looking at the back of his baseball card, sitting by his pool, saying, "This ain't so bad."
Oh my God, I got to stop because you're driving me crazy.
He's retired. Hey, you know what? Speaking of retiring, I think we need to retire this conversation. We're going to take a quick break here, show some commercials, including my favorite one, because when I control the board, we'll always show that Mean Joe Green commercial. But we'll do a couple of them, and we'll be right back with many more great topics here on the Mac and Jack and Doc Saturday Debate Show. We'll see you in a couple moments.
Trisha's having a sleepover tonight. Can I go?
I wonder about Lucy's friends. What should I say? I know you're only 10, but one of these days a friend will offer you a drink. And alcohol at your age can lead to so many things. None of them good.
So can I go to the sleepover?
Lucy, I want you to promise me
I
something.
finished my homework.
Bigger promise. If there's any drinking, I want you to say, "No thanks, not my thing."
Mom.
I promise you, your real friends won't care. Deal?
Sure.
Really?
I promise, Mom.
They really do hear you.
Did you pack your toothbrush?
For tips on how to start the talk, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov, a public service message from the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration.
Supporting the needs of our veterans. That's the goal of all of us at Team AmVets. Like Mitch, Carlos, and Kevin from our Welcome Home team that brings furniture to our vets.
We are Team AmVets.
Or Linda from our thrift stores who brings you great bargains every day.
I am Team AmVets.
And John, who picks up your thrift store donations that support California veterans programs.
I am Team AmVets.
Visit our website or Team AmVets thrift store to donate or shop today.
Join the team!
Mr. Green? Mr. Green?
Yeah.
You need any help? I just want you to know, I think you're the best ever.
Yeah, sure.
Want my Coke? It's okay, you can have it.
No.
Really, you can have it.
Okay.
A Coke and a smile makes me feel good, makes me feel nice.
Be around.
That's the way it should be. I like to see
Hey, kid.
the whole world smiling with me. Coca-Cola as life. Have a Coke and
Thanks, Mean Joe.
smile.
There's nothing better than Thanks, Mean Joe. We'll be right back with some more.
I mean, you can see right now, without LeBron, Lakers are struggling.
Let me tell you about a team I hate, all right? I know the Dallas Cowboy fan is here, so I had to make sure he knew how much I hate this team.
I'm ready.
I've often said that the people who run baseball, they try very hard to ruin it.
I'm from Brooklyn. I don't have a problem saying it to his face.
Oh, I'm from Brooklyn.
Hey, get any.
This is a presentation of Northeast Streaming Sports. Hey, what's going on?
And here we are.
Yeah.
All right, we're back here for the Mac and Jack Saturday Debate Show. A lot of great topics.
It's Mac, Jack, and Doc. We changed the title.
All right. You get
Mac,
credit
Jack.
too. You
All
get credit
right.
and the blame, Doc. So there you go.
It's credit or the blame. All right, so
Well, we might trade you away the way the Yankees did with Jordan Montgomery, though.
it could happen.
Well,
It could happen. I could be traded, and you know, if that happens in April when I'm correct about Albert Pujols, you'll have to say, you know what, we traded away the guy who was right. But we'll save that for another day. Let's keep the debates going. Now, here's a great question. Let's talk a little football. Odell Beckham Jr. He's out there. And would he be best playing for the Rams? Would he be best going back to the Giants? Or would he be best playing for the Green Bay Packers? What an interesting question. If they could get Odell Beckham Jr., which team, or he could pick, which team would benefit the most from having him? The Rams, the Giants, or the Packers? Who wants to go first?
I mean, I'll take it quickly. Okay. I mean, he might go to any team for all we know. There's even a little talk that Von Miller's trying to recruit him for the Buffalo Bills. What is Odell Beckham looking for exactly? Obviously he'd like to go to a winning team, but he's looking for a place, I think, where he could be the guy and go to a winning team. He was with the Rams last year. They won a Super Bowl with him. He caught a touchdown pass in the Super Bowl. He has a lot of good feeling towards them. When they had their ceremony, their ring ceremony before the opening game, he was there having on a Ram, outfit on, to celebrate them winning the Super Bowl. But if he comes back, Cooper Kupp is their main receiver. And the Rams are off to a so-so start as it is. The Giants, he's probably fond of them to a large degree, even though he didn't like the way it ended. In a way, you think maybe he has unfinished business because he had his best years of his career with the Giants. In a way, it's going home. And then there's the Green Bay Packers. To have the chance to play with Aaron Rodgers and be the main receiver and be a Super Bowl contender, I think that's the place that he would benefit the most by. And when he looks at things objectively, I think he'd go there first and foremost. Yeah, and as far as the Buffalo Bills go, I maybe even shouldn't have mentioned that. I just said because Von Miller tried to recruit him. They have Stephon Diggs there. So again, Beckham wouldn't be the main receiver on the team. But guess what? With the Packers, he would be the man as far as the receivers go. Him and Aaron Rodgers, wow, what a duo that could make.
Well,
what do you think, Mac?
This is going to be something that probably no one's thought about. I mean, how about the Cleveland Browns?
They don't want him back.
Wait a minute, Jack. Deshaun Watson is going to be the quarterback by game 11, and one of the best quarterbacks in the league. Can you imagine him and Odell on the same team? I mean, you're talking Super Bowl there. I really think that when Deshaun Watson comes back, Odell Beckham Jr. is going to be with the Cleveland Browns.
Well, would he have that option? Would Cleveland even want him back? That's what I'm. Well, he forced his way out of there, kind of.
That was with Baker Mayfield, Jack, right? Baker Mayfield and him had a problem. But with Deshaun Watson there, holy good God, what a combination that would be.
It's a great point. I think you bring up a great point. And I think it's a big question to think about. I've always lived my life with the idea that you don't burn your bridges behind you, right? You do your best job wherever you go and you give it 100%, and that's what you do. But guys like Odell Beckham have left organizations and not on the greatest of terms. And if that happens and you leave a place, would that place be willing or want to bring you back knowing your past history? And do you say, I'm reformed, I've changed, it's different, it's a different quarterback? That's a great question. And I'm trying to think if there's an instance, can you either of you think of one in sports where somebody left an organization underneath negative circumstances and that franchise brought them back and then they had success after that? I don't know if I know of any situation like that. Do either of you?
I'd have to think it over carefully, but it was funny, like we were talking about Albert Pujols before, the way, if I were the owner of the Cardinals and he left he was a legacy player and I offered someone like that a 9-year deal and he left for the same average salary for a 10th season elsewhere, I wouldn't want to bring him back. Because he didn't care enough. My offer was pretty close to the other one, but he had to have it exactly his way. That's a really good question. And I'm sure there are a lot of cases. I just can't. You see, Doc, you don't prepare me for these things. I mean, you throw me these off-speed pitches when you promise me it's only going to be fastballs. But there have to be a number of cases where that has happened, where you feel a player has kind of reformed after a lot of years. I could think of one right now since we're on baseball. Going back, Lee Mazzilli was a Met matinee idol. But when Mookie Wilson came up, all of a sudden he beat Lee Mazzilli out for the center field job. Mazzilli made a lot of noise. He was a malcontent, and they brought him back. Better than that, the great Tom Seaver. They traded him. He did have a second go-around with the Mets. That's easy to forget. But this is the franchise, Tom Terrific. So he came back.
Right, but he didn't leave under bad circumstances. The Mets traded him.
Terrible circumstance. Right. The Met. He called out the whole Met organization, and he finally demanded a trade. And there were a lot of bad feelings on both sides.
Oh, okay.
When he first left New York, but you're talking about an icon. But then again, isn't Odell Beckham in a certain small sense a giant icon? And
maybe, but I'm actually thinking, would he go back to the Browns? Would the Browns want him?
Well, no,
Max says yes.
Yeah, no, he did. Yeah.
Well, I think the Browns would want him because there's different circumstances. Baker Mayfield's not there anymore. So I think because of the different circumstances, they definitely would take him back.
Interesting. I'm going to go with Jack on this one. When I looked at the question, I was thinking the Packers makes a lot of sense. They need wide receivers.
Sure.
You have a great quarterback who is looking for targets and struggling to find them. So I would think that Green Bay would be a great place to play. Obviously, it's a legendary place. The Bills would be interesting because they're so talented, but I think if he could pick anywhere and the money was the same everywhere, I think I would see him going to Green Bay and becoming Aaron Rodgers' number one target.
Yeah, Doc, also funny, LeBron James left the Cavaliers to go to the Miami Heat, and they were burning his jersey all over.
There's a good example, yeah. And he came back.
You're good enough, they'll take you back if you're good enough.
Sure.
That's a great one.
Yeah.
That's a great example. All right, so moving right along, the Brooklyn Nets coach, Steve Nash. Now, did he send the wrong message by saying that he does not care if Ben Simmons ever shoots the ball as long as he plays good defense? Is that the wrong message? I don't think Simmons needs to shoot. If he plays great defense, I'm happy. Want me to go first on this one?
Sure.
As the guy who knows less about basketball than the two of you, I think what Steve Nash was saying was he was conjuring up one of old John Wooden's philosophies where I don't believe he had the players shooting in practice and they were working more on skills. And it was also a theme in the movie Hoosiers where he wouldn't let them shoot and they were just working on getting in shape and dribbling and practicing defense. I think it's a lot of hyperbole what Steve Nash is saying. He's saying, I just want my player to be great at defense and anything else he can provide to me is going to be the icing on the cake. He doesn't really believe that. He's just touting a philosophy that he wants his player to be in great shape and he wants him to be a premier defensive player. So I don't think he really means what he said. And I don't think there's anything wrong with what he said because I think he's trying to inspire his player to be better on the defensive end. That's my perspective.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think what he's saying is just for what people I guess they'd want to hear. Simmons not only is a great defender, he's like a point forward. He guards the basket well. Great defender. Shooting, of course, needs a lot to be desired. But Ben Simmons definitely is going to be a key to whether the Nets go to the championship or not.
No, guys, you know what I hate about sports? In one play, and I'm going to get to this with Ben Simmons, one play sometimes defines a player's whole career. You could have a great career. Of course, the Bill Buckner thing comes to mind. But I'm going to give you another one. David Wells' perfect game. And I'm going to get back to Ben Simmons again. The last out of the game is a fly ball to Paul O'Neill. He catches it. He pumps his fist. If O'Neill drops that ball, did they retire his number, the Yankees? No way. No way. He was one missed fly ball, one error away from not even being close to having his number retired. So when we would think of Paul O'Neill with the Yankees, we would maybe think of him more as the guy that messed up the perfect game than the Warrior.
You're making an interesting point about the retired number, and I'm going to talk about this a lot on Start Spreading the News after the playoffs, and because I have a lot of thoughts on whether or not Aaron Judge is going to come back or not. But the idea that Aaron Judge would not leave the Yankees because he wants to be in Monument Park and he wants his number retired, I don't think that's an issue at all. I think even if he leaves, there will be a time when the Yankees welcome him back as the conquering hero after his career, even if he spends the rest of his career with the Mets or the Red Sox or the Dodgers or the Giants or wherever. I think he's already guaranteed that his number is going to get retired.
Sure.
He's going to be a Monument Park. So the idea that that if he leaves, he's going to ruin his Yankee legacy, I don't think is even.
I didn't mean to get on this, but I wanted to kind of get to my example on that, even though I love talking about Aaron Judge and could talk about.
And we have an Aaron Judge topic coming up in a moment.
Yeah,
right.
But
getting back Ben Simmons, what was it, like 3 years ago in the 5th game of the playoffs with the Sixers? They're tied 2-2 against the Atlanta Hawks, and in a big moment, he's right under the basket all alone. And he doesn't shoot the ball. He passes it. Sixers lose that game, lose the series. The fans were up in arms. How could you not shoot the ball when you're wide open under the basket? And Doc likes to give Hoosiers as an example. Well, didn't the coach say in Hoosiers, don't shoot the ball unless you're right under the basket all alone? Something to the effect. And that's what Ben Simmons was. And the fans booed him, and he has a mental block about scoring.
Yeah.
So Steve Nash obviously wants to take the pressure off him, saying, I don't care whether they ever shoot the ball. And don't baby this guy who has a mega contract, saying, look, Durant and Kyrie, we're going to look towards them to be our predominant scorers. There are going to be games where Ben Simmons is going to be scoring, games where we're not going to care too much whether he scores a lot, as long as he's playing that great defense. That's our main concern, but not to say I don't care if he never shoots the ball. That's basically like sending out an indirect message. He's too incompetent to score. And Ben Simmons picks up on that. Oh, I'm not, I don't have to score. I don't have to do this. I don't have to do that. And I just don't like that message. You're baiting a guy who's making mega money.
Talking about a player who's defined by a miss, Patrick Ewing, right? Patrick Ewing had a chance to win that series. Instead of slamming that ball home like he normally does, he decides to go with a finger roll. The ball rolls off the rim, and that's what people talk about right now. It's not how great.
I know about the Indiana Pacers in that game.
Right. I mean, Jack, if you think about it, here's a guy who had never had a number 2. He was a backbone of the Knicks during the 80s. And instead of doing what he does best, which would be slamming the ball home, he does a finger roll that rolls off the basket. I don't know what he was thinking, but I know for sure the great career he had is kind of muddied now because of that play.
No, not at all. Mac, I don't know I don't think he was in position to dunk the ball, number one. He wasn't right. He wasn't exact. I understand you meant he could have drove a little more to the basket, maybe been fouled, but it wasn't like he was right underneath the basket.
No, he wasn't. He was coming down the lane, Jack. I mean, I realized there was a guy. I realized there was a guy in front of him, so you get fouled and you get another shot, a 3-point play or whatever. You can't.
I don't think people look at that with Patrick Ewing.
I do.
They remember the play, but I don't think
Jack.
anyone.
I do. I think he's branded for the rest of his life with that. Sad to say, I think he is.
I kind of disagree, and Well, listen, we have a difference.
Patrick Ewing never won a championship, right? I mean, that's the.
Don't remember that more. Yeah. You know,
and they lost a couple of close games, big games. And I was watching. That's one of the few times in my life when I even cared about basketball. I was rooting for the Knicks at that point, and they couldn't get it done in the big spot. So.
Yeah, too bad the Bulls were playing at that time, right? I mean, too bad the Bulls were what they were. So
and they couldn't beat Reggie Miller's team. I guess is that Indiana?
Yeah.
Well, no, they beat them, then they lost them in the playoffs. But Patrick Ewing's problem was he was one. He didn't really have a strong 1A.
Yeah.
Like a support. Jordan had Pippen. Things like that. And when they went up against Houston after Jordan retired, Hakeem Olajuwon, let's be honest, was a little better than Patrick Ewing. That was the reason Houston won. Yeah, you could argue. You could say clearly better if you want. I mean, as great as Ewing was. But, yeah. Okay, Matt, I'll give you that. Yeah.
All right, so here's the next question. We teased it a moment ago, mentioning Aaron Judge. Now, if you watched the Dr. Sam Saturday Yankee show, I basically spent a half hour talking about this, so I won't spend a half hour talking about this again. I'll give my big ideas, but we'll let Mac and Jack go first. The question is, with Aaron Judge still having a chance to win the batting title, should he have sat out that last game of the season? What do you think?
Go ahead, Jack. In a minute.
You know what I think the problem is a lot of times in sports, okay? We live in the moment. We live in the moment, right? Even with Aaron Judge's contract situation, we're living in the moment now. Oh, what he's worth. I hear Keith Engel say, give him whatever he wants. Give him the 10-year deal. Just give it to him. That's what Keith Engel says. You just got to sign him and just do that. I mean, we're not playing with monopoly money here. 10 years, he might be the hottest commodity right now, but what's he going to be 7 years from now? I mean, we don't know. It's a heck of a gamble, and chances are he's not going to be the hot commodity he is at the moment, okay? But with that said, living at the moment, Aaron Judge, he's thinking, Aaron Boone, he's thinking Aaron Judge must be emotionally drained because Aaron Boone was emotionally drained by not giving him an off day, putting him in the lineup. So he finally breaks the American League record, 62 homers, one more game left in the regular season, a meaningless game for the Yankees as far as playoff implications go. So he figures he could use a rest. Absolutely, Aaron Judge could use a rest that day. But the problem is they weren't playing for 6 days after that. I mean, so, what's the big deal? He's a few points down in the batting average race for the Triple Crown. Would it have hurt to DH him? Don't play him in the field. Let him get up one time. If he makes out the first time, you have your analytics people. This is when I believe heavily in analytics, telling you he's going to have to get up 5 more times and get 5 hits to win it. At that point, I say it's not realistic. You could sit down, we put you up one time, put him up one time, he gets a hit. Believe me, in Minnesota, their player Ariz, who won the batting title, they had their analytics people looking. Maybe we should put Ariz in the lineup now, because if we sit him out, he could get caught. Because something like this happened before. Ken Griffey Sr., not Jr., was leading in the batting race the last day of the season against Bill Madlock. Sparky Anderson got some people together with Griffey to figure out the ways to get him the batting title. And they kind of sat him down. Bill Madlock went 4 for 4 for the Cubs and won the batting title. Let's say Judge gets up the first time, he gets a hit, he's a DH. Well, how's he exerting himself much? You tell Aaron Judge, we're going to play you under the condition you don't run all out to first base. We don't want you running 100% on the bases, okay? Swing a bat, maybe he gets a hit the second time. Now Minnesota puts a reason. He makes an out. You could maybe catch him with one big game, but no, he had to rest him like it mattered. What's he getting? So he's going to have 6 days off instead of 5. Oh, wow.
I tried to find a way to be a devil's advocate here, and I can't. There's no reason Judge shouldn't have put him in for that chance at the Triple Crown. I don't understand what he was thinking. As Jack said, he's going to have plenty of rest with 6 days. I don't know what Boone was thinking, if he thought he just wasn't thinking. He just wasn't thinking. So, yeah, I agree with you 100%, Jack.
And I made this point on my site, start spreading the news. And then again, I talked about it for about a half an hour this morning on the program here on Northeast Streaming Sports. What we do with sports is we celebrate the impossible. And I know there was a thought that, well, Judge would have to go 4 for 4 or 5 for 5 in order to catch him. It was almost impossible. Sure, it was almost impossible. And it was probably very unlikely. But in sports, we celebrate when the player, the performer, does something or attempts to do something that's otherworldly, right? And so absolutely, there is no reason that he should have sat that last game. He had a chance for greatness, and instead of going for it, he let that chance pass. And I guarantee you, just like I guarantee about Albert Pujols, I'm stopping. I guarantee you that that Aaron Judge in 5 years, maybe even in 5 weeks, but definitely in a month, in 10 years, when he's looking back on his career, he is going to look back and say, why didn't I play that game? I had a chance. And we celebrate the guys like Ted Williams, who goes 6 for 9 on the final day of the season to raise his batting average from 399 point whatever to 406 because he went for it. And we celebrate when Kerry Strug runs down the aisle and does the leap on the vault and lands on 1 foot because she can't pin the landing on 2 feet and she's injured. And we go, look at that. That is remarkable. She went for it. And even if she didn't get it, we would have said, look how remarkable it was. She went for it and she was injured. And there's a million examples. Willis Reed and players coming off the bench and coming back. And Aaron Judge had a chance. He had a chance to add to his legend. And instead of doing that, he sat down. And that's going to stay with him forever. It's. I know some people say not such a big deal. It was. It's like Roberto Duran, no mas. He sat down.
Does this? Hey Jack, does this come between Aaron Boone and Joe and Aaron Judge right now? I mean, is this a problem that they're?
You want to know something? I don't think so. But to my way of thinking, it's this. And let me know whether you guys agree or disagree. If Aaron Judge would have had a hissy fit, now it's hard to imagine Aaron Judge having a hissy fit per se, but we very firmly said, look, I'm really upset about this, had a heart-to-heart, put me in there to DH. And if I make out the first time, then yank me. I really want to go for this. I think Aaron Boone gives in to him. Remember that the movie 61 with Roger Maris by Billy Crystal? Remember Maris didn't want to play, just the opposite? And the manager talked him into it. And Ralph Houk said, I'll tell you what, come up the first time. And if you want to come out of the game after that, give me a nod and I'll then take you out. It's maybe something like that. Start the
I can't imagine that Aaron Judge argued it. So I think he was in agreement. I'll sit the last game.
Well, he probably said, I want to play. He probably was so drained himself. If I were Aaron Boone, the manager, I would have sat him down and said, look, your few points out, let's put you up in the beginning. But under this condition, you're not going all out running the bases. Do I have your word? Okay. I don't want you trying to run all out on an infield single, stretching it out. That's not acceptable. Okay, we got the playoffs coming. Come to a deal and understand.
Right. The part I disagree with you is I'm not going all out. I think when you're playing, you play. I think that's what you have to do.
Yeah. But I wanted to mention 2 cases. That's the dishonorable club. Wade Boggs sitting on his behind, not playing the last game where he put because Don Mattingly still had an outside chance, and Jose Reyes, who sat out the batting title. So their title is staying. It's funny that what Doc mentioned, guys, about years later, you remember something. Al Leiter was doing a Yankee broadcast. At the time, he did it years ago. And one of his biggest regrets in baseball, he said, is when he was called to fill in for someone who got injured to be on the All-Star team. Instead, he went on a family vacation during that break. And he said, I've always regretted that. It would have added to my resume that I was, an all-star X amount, whatever. And I can't say that I got to that number because I was on a family vacation during the time. He wished he hadn't gone on that little vacation, that he showed up for the All-Star game. But because it was a pain at the time, he bypassed it.
Yeah, I think that's what's going to happen. I think he's going to look back. He's going to say, I had a chance and I didn't. I sat down.
Yeah.
And that's not what we celebrate in sports. That's not why we watch sports movies. That's not why we watch sports events, because when we watch them, we're waiting and hoping to see the impossible.
It's
emotionally drained.
It's sort of like basketball, right? You pay all this money to go see this all-star play, and you go there and he's sitting down and he's not playing. I mean, why are you buying those tickets? They should let you know that, so you're not purchasing those tickets.
Well, and a lot of people paid a lot of money to go to those games in Texas at the end of the year. There's a great quote. And I'll tell this story, and it'll be a little bit hyperbole, but the main point of the quote is the same. It was late in the season. The Yankees had already clinched the American League pennant. Back then, there were no playoffs, so you're already going to the World Series. The game didn't matter, and some guy hits the ball into Death Valley in center field in Yankee Stadium, and Joe DiMaggio, ever graceful, runs deep into Death Valley to make a tremendous catch in a meaningless game, late in a meaningless game. And he runs back to the dugout, and he's sitting on the dugout, and one of his teammates came up to him and they said, Joe, the game doesn't matter. Why are you trying so hard? And Joe DiMaggio said, there could be a kid out there watching me for the first time or the last time, and I owe it to that kid to be the best that I can be. And Aaron Judge, and I think this is sometimes what happens, like when it's a player and there's so much emotion attached to them, like, oh, you don't like Judge. No, I love Judge. I think he's great. But that doesn't mean that he had a chance to step up, and he didn't. And there were 47,000 people who went to that game wanting to see Aaron Judge play, and instead of seeing it, they saw him sitting in a dugout. So he left them disappointed. But again, for himself, I think he's going to leave himself disappointed. I think he's going to look back. He's going to say, I was exhausted. And look, in a month, I'm going to be exhausted at mile 27 or 27. I won't be that far. 22, I'm going to keep going because you finished the job. And he didn't finish the job.
And wait. In fairness to him, had Aaron Boone put his name in the lineup, he would have played. I'm sure Aaron Judge never said, I need the day off.
We'll never know that.
No, Aaron Boone had talked to him when he was chasing the record. You want a day off, and Aaron Judge didn't want it. But it had to be so mentally exhausted for him. Once he did it, he really, in a certain sense, needed to unwind.
Right. And the Yankees are off for 5 days.
But you make a great point. Mac made a great point that's thought-provoking. People buy their tickets to see certain players play. If that player can't play, are you entitled to a refund? Look, I'm going to an NFL game this year. The Green Bay Packers at the Miami Dolphins. I got my tickets. If Aaron Rodgers, for some reason, can't play for the Packers, am I entitled to a refund? I'm paying. No, listen to this, guys. But listen to this. Tickets now are prorated according to the appeal of the game. And the Packer game is the highest priced game on the Miami Dolphins schedule. Highest price. I'd have to pay 3 times the amount I paid for the Packers than I would for, let's say, the Houston Texans, for example. Double the amount even for the Jets if they came in. Now, if Aaron Rodgers can't play, that game doesn't have the same appeal. To me, it's not a greater game than watching, another team necessarily.
Mm-mm. But
why
I
can't I
think
get my refund?
I think the difference, number one, sports would go out of business if they did that. But I think the point that Mac is making, and that we're making regarding Aaron Judge here, isn't if you go to that game in Miami and Aaron Rodgers can't play, that's different than a player saying, I won't play. There's a difference.
Yeah, if he's
Aaron
injured.
Judge could play. He's physically able to play. He's not playing. We've seen that in big basketball games where the star sits down and just doesn't play, but he's physically able. If Aaron Rodgers is hurt, that's different. I mean, people get hurt, then he's not playing, right?
Yeah, I mean, I see that, but the second point, all those people that bought tickets for the Ranger Yankee game, a lot of them bought tickets in advance thinking maybe the game will have certain implications, with Aaron Judge. I think at the very least for entertainment value, let him get up one time as a DH, and you're going to pull him, and you say it before the game, he might only get up one time, so the fans embrace. They could say they saw Aaron Judge for the one at bat, and then you yank him out of there. It's only giving him a cameo, basically, for the fans, but at least they're not leaving totally disappointed. They got to see a little of him there.
Can you imagine that? Can you imagine that with Derek Jeter? I mean, can you imagine Derek Jeter not playing because he needs rest or something crazy? I can't see that. And how many people would be feel terrible that they bought the ticket and Derek Jeter.
I got to tell you something funny. I was at the game, Yankee Red Sox game, when Jeter went into the stands head first. I was also at the game the next night when the Yankees visited the Mets, at Shea Stadium there, and Jeter was in the lineup. The night after he left the game after diving in the stands against the Red Sox, but he was back, the next night.
And that's what we celebrate in sports. That's my point. We celebrate when players do the impossible, when they rise above. We don't celebrate when a player says, these are athletes too. It's all about physicality. I was a little mentally drained.
Yeah.
And so I needed to sit down.
Doc, you should know better than anyone. I've worked with teachers who would they had 10 sick days a year, one per month. They take that one day off for, they say mental health reasons automatically in advance. So, if you're feeling down and you need to take it off, okay, but they take it off even if everything was fine and dandy because they were programmed. I'm going to take that one day off. But then later they have no days in their sick bank, and then they really need them and they fall behind.
But there's a difference between that. If Aaron Judge didn't have a chance, as remote as it was, for the batting title, then of course you sit. Right? You went through the chase. It's all over. You did it. Of course you sit.
They have to see him anyway, Doc. They paid to see Aaron Judge.
Correct. But that's a different argument. I'm talking about in his own mind, of course, or the Yankees' mind. Of course you sit him. But the fact that he had a chance, a remote chance, as much of a remote chance as it was, to do the remarkable and do something even more legendary than hitting 62 home runs. Imagine, guy, he hit 62 home runs and he won the Triple Crown.
Yeah.
He had that chance, and instead of going for it, he sat down.
Yeah.
He's going to regret that. He's going to look back on his life and his career. And he's going to go, I should have tried.
You never know what could have happened. He wouldn't had nothing to lose by getting in there and playing, DHing.
Right.
So I think we're all basically in agreement on that one. So let's get to the next question. Let's see. What do we got here? Oh, this is an interesting one. Joe Madden, the manager, months ago, was furious when the general manager called into the dugout and requested that Mike Trout be removed from the game because the team was losing badly. Mike Trout had complained of soreness before the game, but said he was felt fine during the game. So is it wrong for the GM to call into the dugout and tell the manager what to do? What do you think?
Mac?
Yeah, of course it is. I mean, I remember, and I think Jack remembers this too. You already do that. Dwayne Haskins with the Redskins, the owner calls down the field and removes him from the game and doesn't let the head coach know. What do you do as a coach? I mean, that's the owner. But in this case, even though Joe Madden does know baseball, right? He was a good coach. He has no business telling a manager to pull anybody. He has no business at all. Terrible job by Madden. And if I was a coach, I'd be furious. So that's what I think, Jim.
Most people would agree with you, Mac, but in this case, I won't agree. I think the GM was justified. In this case, he wasn't calling up for any strategy type thing. Mike Trout is the Angels' biggest investment by far. He's a legacy player. His situation is different from any other player. Mike Trout complained before the game of soreness in his groin. He's been a little injury prone, Mike Trout. Later, Joe Madden said he spoke to Mike Trout and he said the soreness dissolved during the game. But when the game was going on, I didn't add this in. I'm sorry, my apologies. The game was out of hand for the Angels.
You added that.
Oh, I did add it. I'm sorry. I wasn't thinking. I wasn't. Yeah. So the Angels were basically, the game wasn't competitive anymore. It wasn't like Trout was needed. It wasn't like a one-run game. I know anything could happen in baseball. I don't want to hear that. But percentages say Trout really wasn't needed that much at that point. And it was a question of, Trout's well-being there. And Madden didn't like the idea he got a call. Well, what's the GM supposed to do? Just leave it alone, and then Trout leaves the game and aggravates, an injury or a discomfort even more. Keep in mind, this is the same Joe Madden, even though he was a successful manager with the Tampa Bay Rays and was the manager on the Cup team that won the World Series. I think he used his ace Chapman with a 6-run lead on short rest.
You know what? We have a special guest coming in right now.
Uh-oh.
Jamie Pags.
Pags. Okay. Well, we're going to do, I think, maybe call a quick audible here and congratulate Pags. I watched the game yesterday. Pags is ecstatic with the Philadelphia Phillies setting a postseason record. No other team came back 6 runs down in the 9th inning in baseball history. Congratulations, Pags.
Well, thank God we were only 2 runs down and scoring 6 runs in the 9th inning. And I tell you, all the different things that I could say about, how that game went. It was a big surprise to watch the Phillies come back like that and score that many runs in the 9th inning. It was, and I feel like it was, that's a little bit of a microcosm of this team, not quitting. Like I said, because I left the one spot and had to go do a charity event, and I was like, oh, it's the 8th inning, they ain't coming back, and I went to go watch and get ready for my charity, and ultimately got to watch in a putt, the rest of the game.
Pags, we were talking early in the show about starting pitchers maybe being pulled out earlier than they should in a lot of cases. Zach Wheeler had it going. He was great, and they pulled him out. They'd only given up a couple of hits, no runs. And then the bullpen started to implode. And then all of a sudden they're down 2-0 right after taking him out. Do you think they should have gone longer with Wheeler? Because he was going really well.
I mean, I guess I understand why he did it. You know, he was at like 96. They don't like to have him go over 100 pitches anymore. It's
It's a
so they're.
playoffs. Everything the
Hey,
season.
listen, I get it. I get it. My thought is that he's fine to go to 104 pitches, 105 pitches. So I think he could have finished out the seventh, and ultimately would have saved those 2 runs. However, who knows how Alvarado would have done in the next inning. So that being said, I mean, things happen the way that they're supposed to happen sometimes. And because realistically, when you think about it, Alvarado threw 1 bad pitch, the batter before the home run. Really that the walk pitch, because he was at a full count. All he had to just throw a strike there, just throw a strike, and he walks him, and then 2 pitches later, it's out of the ballpark, and it's 2-0. It's like, so it was very frustrating to see everything that Wheeler did get lost there. But as I said, St. Louis is built very similar to the Phillies. Their bullpen has very similar issues, and we were able to take advantage of it in the 9th.
Well, Pags, it's great to see you. I'm glad that you made it in today. So was there any part of the game where you got a little nervous? I mean, where Philly made that comeback. Were you nervous at any time during that game?
The moment that they scored 2 runs, it was like, I guess you can't even say nervous. It was just like, it's like it was a pitcher's duel. And we've seen too many times this year where they haven't come back. So when I looked at this, the first thing I thought of was that the Mets game, where the Mets came back from us on the 9th inning and scored like 7 runs to beat us 9-8, and how that propelled them throughout most of the season. I mean, it was that win that really launched them into first place. And ultimately, I think that it could possibly do the same thing here. We were talking yesterday how the week off is, could be detrimental to these teams that have a bye, and that there is such a thing as momentum, and obviously you got to carry it. But if that win starts to propel them and gets them in the right state of mind to go up against the Braves, who knows what could happen?
I have a great audible question, Pax. A great audible question. You could answer it better than us, but I think I know the answer.
Oh, wait. How do you know he could answer it better than us?
I'll tell you why. Because it's a Philly question directly.
All right.
Philly fans. If the Philly fans, what team are they going to be most happy to see bumped out of the playoffs?
By far the Mets. They were cheering just as much. They were cheering just as much for the Padres yesterday as they were for the Phillies.
Wow. Wow. So if the Mets get eliminated and the Phillies go to the next round, Philly fans, you could say, are going to be gloating, and celebrating in a sense.
I don't think they're going to celebrate like, hey, we just won the World Series type stuff.
No.
I think it's going to be, appropriate. They crushed us all year long, and here we are making it further than them in the playoffs. I think it's going to go to the stigma that the Mets already have, is that they implode when it matters. And that, hey, they had a 10.5 game lead in a division or more. Actually, I think they had a 14 game lead at one point, and to come back and to lose in the wild card round to a team that they should beat, I think that speaks for itself.
I agree with that.
Pags, is it more important to win the division, or actually, this was the question we started off, not more important, and forgetting the implications of the bye and all that kind of stuff. But do you feel in sports, or especially baseball in this regard, that it's important to win the division to come in first place? Does that have meaning anymore, or you don't think that really matters at all anymore?
In fact, at this point, because of the bye, I think that it's even a little bit of a detriment, unless you have a team like Houston does. And I guess you could even arguably say the Dodgers the same way, that they've won so many games and that they're so used to winning that you can overcome like one loss, like at least in your head, like, hey, no, all right, we just blew that one. We'll come back tomorrow. Especially because when you have the wild card, you don't have a chance. Like if this was a 1-game deal, I don't know that the Phillies would have won that game. The fact that this is the best of 3, I think gives them loosened their hands up a little bit in the 9th inning, where you're not squeezing, you're not too tight, because this is the last at bat that you could have all season long. So I kind of feel that the wild card and not winning the division may be a better situation, because you're not stopping playing baseball. You're so play baseball all season long. Now you're in this pause for a week by winning the division or being the top 2 divisions, top 2 winners, and then getting that bye where you don't play for a week, and then you got to start playing again. And you're playing the most important games of the year right afterwards. I don't know that you want to do that. I think that you want to, stay loose, stay limber, and so I think that it's not as important to win the division as it was before, when there was only the division winners that went into playoffs.
All right, great answers. We had just a couple of questions left. We were debating this idea of, is it right for the GM to call into the dugout during a game and tell the manager what to do? Jack was saying in this situation, it had to do with a game with Mike Trout, that it was okay. Mac was against it. I'm going to side with Mac on that one. I don't think the GM ever should be calling into a dugout and saying to the manager, this is what you do. You can have strategy discussions before a game, but I think the person in control of that game has to be always and completely the manager. That's the person you hired to run the game, from beginning to end. That's that person's job. And it's not for somebody else to call into the dugout. I mean, Steinbrenner used to do that all the time, supposedly, with Billy Martin, to say, this is what's going to happen, and you should be taking this guy out. That's inappropriate. I'm against it 100%.
Doc, as far as strategy goes, I agree with you 100%. That's not what I'm saying. Pags, the question is, Mike Trout complained of soreness in the groin before the game, and then the game was lopsided. I forgot whether it was in the Angels' favor, their opponent. But Trout's value to the game was minimal at that point. And because he complained of soreness in the groin before the game, the GM, I think, was looking at him as an investment and called Joe Madden to get him out of there, because the game is out of hand at that point. I think that's an exception. Normally, I would agree with both Mac and Doc 100%. Don't get involved with your GM. Your manager's running the game. You could speak to him before, after the game, but not during the game. I think that's an exception because Mike Trout is a huge investment for that franchise and did complain about soreness in the groin before the game.
It's scaring me that I seem to be agreeing with Jack more and more frequently. So in this case, like, again, how things are perceived by us in comparison to how they may have really been. I mean, I understand the GM could have called down and said, hey, maybe said to the man, hey, do you think maybe we should get Trout out? He was complaining earlier. This game's seems ridiculous to have him in there anymore. We have to think about how tomorrow is, that Madden may have been so involved in the game and trying to do whatever he can to try to still win that game that you may not see the forest for the trees. And that's where I kind of think that's where you find if your manager and your GM are really on the same page. And in this case, we found out that they weren't really on the same page. So I think that was more a testament to that specifically. And ultimately, I think that you're right that he could have called down there. I don't think you demand anything. I think that you say like, "Hey, is it maybe we should get him out of there?" And then Madden says, "Hey, I don't want to. What are you calling me for?" Blah blah. Blah. Like if your manager goes off like that when you're saying, "Hey, yeah, you're looking at the guy who's getting, literally $450 million of the franchise money, you want to make sure that that investment lasts as long as possible. And you're not,
But
you don't.
But Pegs,
Again,
doesn't it matter? Doesn't it matter to the fans though? I mean, they paid. We've talked about this. They paid big money to see Mike Trout make an appearance, and
and
if
he
he's
did
not
make the appearance.
right,
And he did
but
make the
I
appearance, and
understand.
he did play.
Okay,
And
he did.
obviously,
He did make the appearance. But isn't there value in that? I mean, isn't there value to the fans to come and see this guy, to watch him play, to even in any circumstance?
but isn't there a value to see him play tomorrow too, instead of pulling a groin?
Well, I mean, the season's over, Pax, for them. So
Well,
what about
well, again, I'm not exactly sure when this happened because this had to have happened early. I
No, it
kind of
happened
imagine this may have
shortly.
happened at the Phillies week. This is because he was hurt. He didn't play this next game, and after Philadelphia, after they left Philadelphia, he was fired. So I got to imagine that this was a Phillies game, game one, and he came in and he complained about some soreness, in his groin, and he played that game because it was Philly and the GM probably called down because we were crushing him that game and said to pull him out. And he was pulled out by like the seventh inning, the sixth, seventh inning. He had played, but then he had a pinch hitter because he did had that, I guess some groin soreness. And that whatever exchange happened in game one, they lost the next two games, and Madden got fired right after leaving Philadelphia.
Yeah. So I'm going to disagree with you both, and I don't think it's appropriate for the GM to be calling into the dugout. You give people jobs to run a game or do a certain job, and the GM's job is to oversee the team. If he has a problem, he talks to the manager after the game. But it absolutely, without any question, undermines the manager's authority when the GM calls into the dugout.
Agree.
You
I
warm my
hear you, but
I'm mentioning Steinbrenner calling the dugout. Yeah, I'm laughing. You know, it would be a great multiple choice question. If you had the choice to pick one of these three owners to play for, sports owners of the past, Steinbrenner, you had to answer to this owner: George Steinbrenner, Charlie Finley, Donald Trump, who owned the New Jersey Generals. Which one would be the toughest? You don't have to answer. I mean, it's just like kind of like joking around. But Steinbrenner, maybe he had a heart of gold, but he was impossible. He was impossible. What do? Do you hang up on him when he's calling the dugout or what?
I think Billy Martin ripped the dugout, the phone out of the wall, didn't he? Isn't that the rumor?
Yeah.
All right, you know what? You were just saying it's multiple choice questions. We have a little time, so I found these this or that sports questions. So let's just bounce these around, and I'll ask a few, and we'll see where we all stand on these types of things. Would you rather be the star of a bad team or an average player on an elite team? We'll just go right around the corner here. We're going to start with Pags, then we'll go to Mac, and then we'll go to Jack. Star on a bad team or an average player on a great team?
So, now we're asking, would I rather be Mike Trout or would I rather be somebody on the Astros who's like the third pitcher, in the rotation? If rings are the answer and you want rings, I think, that championships is what we all strive for. I think I'd probably want to be the average person. And it's great to have all the talent, but if the talent, you can't win games by yourself. This is not boxing. This is not horseshoes, so if being the best at this game isn't going to win you a championship, and championships are what you strive for, I would rather be on the great team, not be the great player.
What do you think, Mac?
I'll just say for fun, the star. I want to be the guy that's standing in front of the cameras, and everybody wants to be around me, and yeah, posing. Of course, I don't really, but I'm just saying this just for fun. So yeah, I mean, why not be the star when you get a shot?
Guys, if ESPN calls me and they offer me a chance to be on the show Around the Horn, I'm very limited in the amount I could say. I'm on the bottom of the totem pole there, but I could say a few words now and then on the show. Be an impact player on this show here. I mean, I'm going to go to Around the Horn, I guess, but I love you guys, but let's be honest about it. You want to be a star.
Sure.
You want to be in the big stage. I mean, Pags, what about the money, Pags? You'd rather have a ring than the millions and millions of dollars? I mean, the rings are great. It means a lot, championships. But let's be honest about it. I mean, I think everyone strives to be, the big fish there. You want to be a team player, but you want to be the big fish.
All right, I'm going to go. Yeah, I think I always want to be the best I could possibly be. So if I could be the star, I think I'd be that. I've never been the star, really. So I don't know what that would feel like. I've always been a bit player on a great team. So that's also a great feeling. That's a great question, but I think I would go.
Pax, Earl the Pearl Monroe went from Baltimore. They were called the Baltimore Bullets at the time. Now they're called the Washington Wizards. To the Knicks. When he came to the Knicks, he went from being a superstar in the league to just fitting in. And he won his championship, there with the Knicks. And he was the ultimate team player. But you kind of wonder, had he just stayed where he was, he wouldn't have gotten a championship, but his brand may have increased.
And I feel like also with championships money.
True.
So
true.
It's like you get that's worth something in the world of sport. I want guys that have won, that have gotten the chip, that have made it over the hump, because they know how to make it over the hump again. The winning begets winning, and I think that's was it what Mike Singletary says? I want winners. I kind of do. I want winners. I want to be able to.
He was a terrible coach with the 49ers as far as
but so the perfect example of this is the Las Vegas Golden Knights. They put together a bunch of players who were good players on teams, but not great players. These players were
team
and wind up going to the Stanley Cup in their first year. And ultimately, the NHL learned from that because they didn't let Seattle do the same thing.
Right.
But ultimately, when you think about that, all those guys that went on that team wound up making a lot more money because they did get to the Stanley Cup. Now, of course, they didn't win it, but they made it there. And all those guys wound up making more money because they were good players on a really good team.
Right.
And let's feel the Flyers an expansion team right now.
I'm trying to say.
Mac, you better go.
Yeah, I think this could get. I'm gonna jump in now before it gets vicious.
1 second, Doc. Let's not forget about Michael Jordan, right? I mean, the greatest of all time. He won all his championships. His Nike sneakers. I mean, he's made millions off of that. So I think he's a perfect example of someone who is a superstar and still a champion, right?
Mm-hmm. So here's the next would you rather. So I'm going to now bestow upon all of us the type of skills like Deion Sanders or Bo Jackson had. And we are both, all of us are elite players. And would you and playing multiple sports, would you rather win a World Series or win a Super Bowl? And we'll start with Mac on this one. Would you rather win a World Series or a Super Bowl?
Wow. I guess a Super Bowl. I guess it would be a Super Bowl that I would rather That's tough, man. Yeah, I'm gonna stick with Super Bowl. I'd rather win a Super Bowl because I don't know. I'd stick with the Super Bowl though.
Great answer. What do you think, Jack?
I go with the Super Bowl. Had you added in a third thing of win the World Heavyweight Championship, the legitimate one, I think the World Heavyweight Championship would have won out, but I'll take the Super Bowl over the World Series. Something about the Super Bowl, it's so darn exciting. It's one and done. You know, the World Series kind of drags out best of 7. I think the Super Bowl gives you a bigger buzz.
Here's my answer.
Well,
I'm playing the World Series, baby.
Okay.
All right. Pags, what do you think?
So this is the one where I have to add the extra,
You're not allowed to.
Because I to be honest,
first you have to answer the question: Super Bowl or World Series.
So I would go. My trophies would go Stanley Cup, NFL, the Lombardi, then the World Series. That's how that would go. Stanley Cup is the hardest trophy to win in sports, and I think that has a little bit more value to me in terms of putting that cup above my head, rather than kissing the Lombardi. However, it's not by a lot. Championships are championships, and we're talking very small steps in between. So I like, hey, yeah, I'd love to do the Stanley Cup. Then I'd love to kiss the Lombardi. Then I want to be able to win the World Series. All three of those are like, A1, AB, A2, A3. So it's
Deion Sanders came close to both. He was, Super Bowl champion, and he was on the Atlanta Brave team, that lost to Toronto in the World Series. I wonder what he would have said had he won both. He probably would have said Super Bowl, but you have to consider he's a legendary football player, and he would have been no more than a good baseball player. But if he was as great a baseball player as he was a football player, I would have been very curious what his true feelings would have been on that.
Yeah. Interesting. All right, here's one more, and then we're going to be at the top of the hour. We'll start with Jack this time and go around the horn. Would you rather be a elite college coach or an elite professional coach? And let's make it any sport you want. You can expand on that. But would you rather coach at the collegiate level or the professional level?
The professional level. Okay. And if you need an example, college coaches become NFL coaches. NFL coaches, they rarely leave an NFL gig to go to college voluntarily, okay? To just decide that they're going to want to go down to college. To me, it's the ultimate usually. They're famous college coaches who become comfortable, like Coach K in their positions, Bobby Knight, who didn't want to go to the NBA because why risk it? Because why risk your legacy is so big? But I think for the most part, could you imagine Bill Belichick getting a college coaching job? No way. But Urban Meyer, when he was a legend, he worked. Well, no, I mean he got fired, Bill O'Brien. Okay,
Bear Bryant.
Bear Bryant, right, exactly. I say an higher level professional.
I think the question for me is if you're a professional coach, you have professionals. If you're a college coach, you're the one teaching them a little bit more on that level. But I would go professional as well. We're running out of time, so I'm going to go to Pags, and then Matt gets to close this baby out.
If you're asking me whether I want to be Nick Saban or Bill Belichick, Bill Belichick.
Mac, it's all you.
Listen, I'd rather be the college coach. I mean, look at the legends of college football. Newt Rockne, right? All these guys that own college football, the campuses, the excitement. There's more excitement in college football than professional football. So for me, it would be the college football coach.
All right. So,
however,
folks,
I want to throw a quick little caveat on that. I would much rather be a college basketball coach than a professional basketball coach.
Great.
Just and that's sports specific.
Yeah.
That's where I would go.
Yeah.
That's a good point. Yeah. If I had the choice between college basketball, NBA, yeah, that's thought provoking. Good point, Pags. Yeah.
Great point. All right, my dear friends, listen, we spent 2 hours talking about a variety of various sports topics. Of course, the Mac and Jack show is on every Wednesday through Sunday. They'll be back again tomorrow morning.
Thursday through Sunday. Thursday.
Thursday. Yes, I was trying to get you guys to work a little harder.
My contract was worked out.
Yeah, I'm sorry. So it's now been reduced to Thursday to Sunday. I'm sorry, I misspoke. Every Thursday through Sunday. They'll be back again tomorrow at the big NFL show. Don't miss it. Thanks for tuning into the Mac and Jack Sports Debate Show and Doc. Doc. Sports Debate Show and Pags here on the Northeast Streaming Sports Network. Have yourselves a great and wonderful Saturday.
Thanks, everybody.